Goods. If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Saratoga Today on the HHH Racing Podcast for July 30th. I am your host, Kyle Roscoe, with my co-host, Charlie Freeman. And what an amazing card we had yesterday with the Jim Dandy and the Alfred G. Vanderbilt Stakes. A very controversial day, might I say, yesterday with everything that happened. Elite Power, Gunite. An absolutely great race there, and then everything that happened with Forte, Saudi Crown, and Angel of Empire. Just fabulous racing yesterday, Charlie. I don't know if you had any skin in the game yesterday or not, but I just wanted to kind of throw it to you and talk about the racing yesterday before we get on to today.
Yeah, I actually didn't have a chance to bet on it. I took the weekend off, had to go with some friends to the National this weekend, the big sports card show in Chicago. But I did look at some highlights and stuff, and there were definitely some big races and some fun action I wish I didn't have to miss out on.
No, it's fine. I mean, trust me, you wouldn't want to be me because, as everyone knows on here, I liked Gun Night. I liked Saudi Crown a lot, and just it was a game. It's just one of those days. It's a game of noses. For me, I lost, I think, 4 races by a neck or less yesterday, which is just those days are the worst, realistically speaking. I'd rather lose by half the stretch than lose by a nose, personally. And the fact that it happens, 4 times with Dr. Shivels, another one that comes to mind yesterday, lost by a neck. Just a rough day yesterday. Hopefully, we can turn the luck around today. But guys, real quick, just going over. Every single live stream that's posted on the HHH Racing Podcast channel is posted on our audio platforms as well, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. Make sure you go follow over there. We have normal power picks. They go out every Saturday, 2 tracks per card. It comes out to $4 a weekend. It's $15.99 a month. Patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. Make sure you get in on the power picks as we are very in the positive on the ROI. So would greatly appreciate it, and it would help you guys out as well. Subscribe to the new Saratoga only power picks as well. That's on our website, hhhracingpodcast.com. If you go there, go to the power picks tab on the top of the screen, you will see for the Saratoga power picks for next weekend. Again, you get 3 cards for under 3 full cards of analysis for under $20, which includes pick 5s, spot plays, spot play, price plays, and ABC grids. Would highly recommend checking those out. Again, that's hhhracingpodcast.com and the Power Picks tab at the top of the screen. But Charlie, we're not going to waste any time here. We got a lot of people watching here early already this morning. Thanks so much to everybody for joining in on the show. This is a big thing I wanted to touch on at the beginning of the show. Is Charlie, I'm sure you don't know this already, so I want to make sure that you're aware. Bill Kelly joined the show very early this morning. It's beautiful at the track, but off the turf, races 1, 3, 5, and 10. And today we're talking about the late pick 5 at Saratoga. So the one race that changes our opinions is the 10th race as it comes off the turf for that maiden special weight. So again, for everyone at home, that is 1, 3, 5, and 10 off the turf today. Bill, again, thanks so much for joining early and putting that in there. Filiconti's here. Katie's here. Stephen Grutner's here. And Katie, yes, I am in charge today. We're going betting and boozing today, ladies and gentlemen, although it is 9:30 in the morning. But we're going betting and boozing today. Philip Conti is like playing poker. Absolutely. Joseph Lauson's top of the morning to you. Thanks so much for doing the show, Joseph. Everyone else, feel free to comment. I'm sure everyone has looked at the card today that's watching here. Feel free to put in your opinions on the live chat, and I will gladly bring them up, and we'll definitely talk about them. But Charlie, like I said, without further ado, we're going to get going pretty quick here. The first race in the late pick 5 that we are going to talk about is race number 6. It is a main special weight going 6.5 furlongs on the dirt for fillies 2 years old. And as I bring up the Equibase right now, it comes out to a field of 9, with the morning line favorite being the number 5, Life Talk for Irad Pletcher, 5-2 morning line. Again, the biggest thing I want to bring us full screen before we go on to the PPs and I'll let you talk about your picks as I bring them up right now. But the biggest thing, especially when it's nice when these races are first in the sequence for us, because the board tells you a lot of what you need to know. This number 5 Life Talk, if you have the clock report, they've been pretty good, but there are others that have very good workout reports. So just make sure you check the board to see where the money is going, not only in the win play show pools, but also the will pays. Look for the doubles, the pick threes, as this is in the middle of the card. Always check where the money is going. But Charlie, you have the number 3 on top, actually, who I don't have anywhere. And like I said, there's a lot of different ways you can go in this. But Wakisu, I believe is how you say that name, for Bill Mott. Junior Alvarado worked a bullet last time on the Oklahoma track, July 23rd.
Yeah, so this was tough for me. I mean, I really thought there were a lot of obviously young, brand new horses who haven't run before that were interesting. I noted actually the 4 and 6 who you have below that I don't have anywhere. But yeah, this horse, I mean, Bill Mott has been, I mean, he's obviously always been one of the best trainers in the business, but he's been really good with his first-time starters lately. The horse, as you mentioned, has just been working out bullet after bullet. He gets his main guy in, I believe, Junior Alvarado.
Yep.
And so that was really what, again, just stood out to me. I mean, the strong works. The horse definitely looks ready for this spot. And, I like that the horse also coming out of American Pharaoh, who obviously had a great career. And then, with the bullet workouts and how Bill Mott's been doing, with his first-time starters lately, it certainly was a horse that interested me.
Just a little bit of a good career for American Pharaoh, I would say.
He did all right.
He did all right, but realistically, if I go to the dams, the biggest thing that if you're not, if you like the workout report, I would highly suggest it from DRF is what we use out here. But if you go to the dam has never had a one race at 2 or a progeny race at 2 out of 3 runners, I believe. But she has 1 for 3 with her first time starters. American Pharaoh is about 10% with his first time starters at 2. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind is how these dams and the sires do coming first time out. Charlie, you have the number 7 Ringy Dingy in second. This is Louis Size, Danny Gargan with another bullet. Like I said, a lot of these horses are really, really working well.
Yeah, so I actually originally had this horse on top, and then I kept flipping back and forth between the 3 and 7, and the 3 was my original top pick, so I said to stick with my gut. But yeah, I mean, I love Luis Saez on the horse. I know he'll ride aggressive. The bull-out workouts are impressive, and what really stood out to me when I was reading the additional notes is that this horse was trained with Dornock, I think is the name, which was the I know I'm biased because of the Kentucky Derby, but that was the full brother to Mage.
Yep.
But I watched the replay of that race, and Dornock ran very, very well. And if it wasn't for just getting a brutal trip down the stretch and on the turn, just kept getting blocked off, got stuck on the rail, couldn't really get a good angle, and the horse got a little green when it got on the rail.
Yep.
But ran a very tremendous race and probably should have won it with a cleaner trip. So for the fact that this horse was able to breeze and go toe-to-toe with that horse in the workouts really stood out to me. I think this horse is very live. And again, I was flipping back and forth. You could very well, at least in my eyes, make an argument to put this horse on top. And I'd be interested to see with the board if people pay attention to the fact that the horse worked out with the Mage brother that ran so well, if that would affect the money taken on the horse at all.
Yeah, I mean, that Dornock was extremely green on the rail. I mean, he almost ran into the rail 3 times, I mean, down the stretch. So that is definitely one thing to keep in mind. Who obviously Dornock is also trained by Danny Gargan, but I mean, working bullets with Dornock is nothing to be ashamed of. So Ringy Dingy could definitely be live again. The biggest thing is to look at the board. Charlie, you have the number 5 and 3rd. I have this horse on top for Rapoli, Pletcher, and Irad. I mean, Gun Run, the reason I put this horse on top, and also, sorry, for the number 7, the only thing that took me off this 7 was the dam is 0 for 6 with 2-year-old with first-time starters and 0 for 6 with horses at 2 years old. Granted, a lot in the money, so that could be something to keep in mind. But that's one thing that kind of threw me off. But obviously, he is a half to defunded and looking at roses. So this horse is definitely bred to be there. Just maybe not first time out is what was taking me off the horse a little bit. Life Talk is, I mean, the connections I have this horse very, very well meant. The damn touchy-feely is 1 for 7 with 2 years old, but Gun Runner, if you go to Gun Runner stats, I mean, his stats at 2 years old have been lights out. He's winning 18% with his 2-year-old first-time starters, which is 7% over the average. This filly, was sent to Rapoli for $335,000. So I think this horse is extremely well meant, working really well, and as long as Irad can work out a good trip, which I'm sure he will, I think Life Talk could really be live. But again, we all say it all the time. We got to look at the board. Charlie, is that kind of the way you saw it with just the connections, or did you find something else?
Yeah, it was just tough for me to leave the horse out. I mean, the thing is, Pletcher and Irad obviously are a great duo, and they've been running fine. Obviously, 12%. I think it's in the notes that they were like a 12% with first-time starters at Saratoga, which obviously is very solid. But for me, I just figured because of the connections that this horse you probably wouldn't get as much value. And, since it is a bit unpredictable, and for me, the workouts from the horse didn't really move me. I know the last workout was a bullet. But some of the others just didn't do much for me. And I'm kind of happy you had the 6 there, because actually originally I was flipping between the 5 and 6 being the top 3, but I just couldn't leave the 5 off. But I think Alex Beach, another one, at least opening at a big price. And I'll let you touch on it more since you have the horse in your top 3. But I think that's a very live and interesting horse. Again, I obviously have my bias towards Tyler Gaffleon, but the horse is working very well. 47-3, minute 4. I think the trainer also is a very solid ROI with first-time starter or 2-year-olds. I know you're a little bit better with the stats, so maybe you could pull up for the chat what that stat is. And I'm curious to see what you liked about the 4, because I know that the odds obviously say the horse should fire well, but I didn't really have that horse anywhere.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I mean, I'll tell you a few things. I could not leave the 4 off of me. But for first, Alice Beach, I really am a fan of the Omaha Beaches. They've come out firing. Omaha Beach has had 12 progeny get to the races first time out, and he's won 4 out of 12. So 33% for Omaha Beach out of his first crop. This horse is, like I said, I think this last one is more of just a maintenance work for Tom Amos. He usually likes to pull that card right before a race, but the workouts before have been lights out. Especially, he had one really nice one, the 47-3 over the Saratoga Dirt. I just think this horse, like I said, out of Omaha Beach, I think this horse could be really live, and I really like to trust, especially at a price. The number 4 Muggin is one horse that could really be live or really not. I mean, this bullet last the 24th at Saratoga over the actual Saratoga Dirt. This horse was sold for $1.2 million in the August of 22 sale last year as a yearling. Paulo Queen, if you look at Paulo Queen, won the test at 55-1. So again, just another horse that the dam's extremely well meant. 1-for-1 with her first time starters. Pass and Stowe won at Monmouth, going 6 first time out by 4 1/4. Obviously, I would argue this is a much bigger spot for Muggin, but for a much bigger colt. Into Mischief is 16% with his 2-year-old first time starters. And for a horse that just seems extremely well meant, there's no way I could leave this horse off my ticket, as at least, especially with Asmussen taking the training job on this horse. But there's realistically, like, the number 2 for Chad is another one to watch on the board. Other than that, I couldn't really find too much of a reason to look at these other horses. This D-Wayne Lucas came out at Ellis first time and really didn't do a whole lot of running at 40-1. John P. Terranova is not very good. He's decent with his 2-year-olds, and the horse has been working fine, but the workout report seemed to not point to him. And then ice cold for Kenny McPeak. Matoli is 2 for 33 with his first time starters, and the dam's over 2 with her 2 other first time starters. So there's not the only other one I would look at is the Chad, would see who takes money, but the board will be your friend with the first race in the pick 5 sequence. I'm going 5, 4, 6. Charlie's going 3, 7, 5. Guys, switching over the picks right now, as this race, number 7, out of the other ones that are off, this race and the 9th race, the Bowling Green, these races are on the turf course. This one will be run a mile and a 16th on the turf, and allowance optional claiming 80,000, draws a full field of 12 with 4 also eligibles, 3 MTOs. The morning line favorite is the number 2, I believe. Yeah, Kuramata for Flavian Pratt and Chad Brown. The second choice is the number 9, Easter, and then the third choice is number 11, Jerry the Nipper. And as I switch over the picks right now, Charlie, you are going with the morning line favorite in this race, the number 2, Kuramata.
Yeah, I really like this horse. I mean, I understand the fear that you have to look out for. We've talked about this before on Betting and Boozing on a few other episodes about horses coming off a huge layoff and, kind of wondering, do they need that race? Will they be back? But I trust Chad Brown, and Flavian Pratt's been doing a tremendous job lately. So I believe if this is the spot they want to put the horse in, that was intentional. The horse, what really stood out for me is just the bullets. The horse has been working out really well, so it doesn't really seem like, from a conditioning standpoint, that the horse will have any trouble getting back to speed. Obviously the figures say yes, and me, I always have my bias where I tend to prefer horses that like to close in these longer distant races. I think this horse is a deserved favorite, and I really do believe if Kurumada runs back to, the form pre-layoff, I think this horse will be very tough in this spot. And you can see also the horse has taken a ton of money in the past. So clearly the public, every race has believed the same thing.
Which, that last race in Monmouth would definitely be good enough to win this race. Although I would argue that, he definitely got the setup that day, but he's coming back at 6. That's my only thing. Obviously, he got the ultimate equipment change in being gelded this past since we last saw him last August. Obviously, the layoffs are concerned, although with Chad winning over 30% off the 180-day layoff, he places his horses very well. I think Kurumada could definitely be a factor, as I have this horse in third as well. Just coming off of a 11-month layoff, almost 12-month layoff, coming back at 6 years old. If this horse is coming back at 4 or 5, where you can tend to see a little bit of improvement in the colts, that's my only thing. And this horse definitely will be taking a decent amount of money. So I went elsewhere. But Charlie, you went on all the way to the outside for your second choice, which this is one horse that I did not know what to do with personally. I think you can go many different ways, but Jerry the Nipper for Pletcher and Jose Ortiz.
Yeah, it's really tough. Again, I like the connections. Jose, another one who's been running very well, and Pletcher's always game. What I just like about this horse so much, which we have talked about, with the versatility is the horse. I know the horse tends to be towards the front, but doesn't really fade and kind of shows that it has enough speed to kind of sit that stalking trip and be able to be always, in and around at the end. Again, the horse has been working out well. And, I've also highlighted a lot how much consistency matters to me. And, with a 94 and 95, and then to come off that long layoff and come back with a 94 and a 90, the horse hasn't lost a step off the layoff, still looks just as good as ever. And I feel like if you kind of look around the field, if you're looking for figures that are good enough to win and consistency, Jerry the Nipper is right there a ton. I was flipping between the 2 and 11 for who I want to put on top. But I do not think you'll get anywhere near 9-2 just because of the connections. But I was very surprised to see that kind of value. I know the post isn't the most ideal, but I really do think Jerry the Nipper is a very solid horse who, again, just has in the last 4 starts really shown very consistent form, even off the big layoff.
I was gonna say the layoff is the thing for me. Came back in state bred stakes, which is one thing that out of open company you tend to be wary about. But the last 2 races in open company, he has won and pretty decently. With a 91 and a 93 and a 95, and then optional claiming back at Aqueduct last year, and then back at Belmont as well last year. And then in an N1X, he still won by 1 3/4. The post isn't ideal, and I think the tactics might be a little bit against him. I think there's other speed in this race, and while he wants to be close, I also don't know how much this horse really likes the soft turf. That's going to be an interesting thing. I'm sure the turf will be listed good today. After all the rain they suffered yesterday, that pulled the races off the turf, which threw everything into a disarray yesterday. But that's just my 2 question marks, which is why at low value, I decided to leave Jerry the Nipper off my ticket. And you have my top pick in third, which I went with Easter for Grand Motion Gaffleon. This horse has been racing consistent off that. This had 3 races off the layoff, ran in the dinner party, got out slow, never really got a chance, although was closing late. And the other 2 races at a mile this year has really done absolutely nothing wrong. Like I said, the only problem with Easter is he tends to have some gait problems. So you can see just off the races in the U.S., off slow, step slow, off slow. He just has a little bit of gait issues. Once he rectifies the gait issues, though, he gets out and he is tactical. So from that 9 hole, I think he can sit a very good trip. Just a matter of, and the other thing I wanted to touch on was this Euroform running on the soft turf is running very well on it. So I think the soft turf only really helps Easter, which is why I went to him on top for Matacat. Just the connections are there. And Charlie, I don't know if you wanted to add anything onto that, but I think Easter is very live on the spot.
Yeah, I always love a Tyler Gaffleon horse, so I always have to be considering the horse somewhere. But yeah, I think Easter's very interesting. But as you noted, that was kind of my worry. Is obviously with me liking the 2, who's more of a closer. I wanted to kind of go with a horse on top that's going to close, and then a horse that could be at the front to have 2 opposite things.
Yep.
And what kind of came down to it is they have similar early and late speed if you look at the 2 and the 9 based off the figures. But as you noted, the big thing that stood out to me was repeated issues with being a step slow, being off slow, problems in the gate. The problem is, especially if you're a closer who lacks early speed, and both the 2 and the 9 compared to this field kind of lack it, is if Easter does get off to a slow start. And I think also because of the form in Europe with the soft turf will probably take plenty of money. It is just a little worrisome, because if the horse does break slow and the 2 gets the first jump, I would favor the 2. So that was the one thing that was a little nerve-wracking is, it happens once, not that worried, but for it to happen as many times as it has, it is something I feel like you have to know. And again, just because of Chad, as we talked about, liking to spot his horses. Then I'll let you touch on your bottom 2. And I just wanted to shout out 2 long shots that I like to finish in the money, but I'll let you touch on your top 3 first.
Okay, I'll go real quick. Simon O'Neill, they are running on the turf today, although they are only running on the turf races 7 and 9. The other races, which is 1, 3, 5, and 10, they are off the turf. So only these 2 races that we're talking about today, and we're talking obviously about the 10th, but it will be off the turf. The number 4 unanimous consent for Chad and Irad, who I have in second. I think Chad was always real well meant for this horse, although he does look a little slow on paper. I like that he gave him a layoff. He's coming back at 4. He's worked very well up until this spot, and Chad puts him. I mean, just the people he's lost to before the 3 races back early last year, losing to Emmanuel Compensis, who's the $1.2 million Colt who we haven't seen since last year, and then Celestial City, McKinnon. I mean, Grand Sonata. I mean, well, obviously he ran 10th, but only by 4.5. I just think coming back at 4, this Colt could be ready to fire off the layoff and if he shows a little bit of improvement to those 90s, I think the number 4 can be definitely interesting in this spot. And the number 2, Kuramata, we already talked about. The only thing that scares me a little bit is the layoff, but obviously it's Chad, so it doesn't scare me off too much by any means. But coming back at 6, as I touched on, gelded, trying to find something else in this horse late into his career. I'm willing to go other places for a little bit of value. But Charlie, go ahead, touch on your 2 long shots, and we'll move on.
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on the 6 and the 10 real quick. Now, I know it seems a little biased, but I genuinely do think there's some interest on Dominican Pioneer. Obviously, it's a Wesley Ward horse. But the reason I'm interested is the works have been ridiculous. A minute 59 and 3. If you basically, from what we've been seeing lately, if there's any jockey you can pick out for a horse that needs the lead, it's Luis Saez. He's just done a tremendous job at that. And the thing that stood out to me though is this horse has run against other horses in this field well. The horse has done a great job of being able to get on the lead and stay on the lead, going longer distance. So I'm not saying this horse will get away, but I do think that there is an outside shot that the horse certainly will get to the lead and should. It's the speed of the speed. But I think the horse could hold up, and at the very least, I don't know if it can go the distance, but at the very least could finish in the money. And at 10-1, love those odds if you have a strong feeling on one of the closers like how you and I do with the 2 and 9. Then the other one, which I saw the chat talked a little bit about, is Grand Sonata, which is a horse you touched on as well. Certainly would need to take a step forward, but when you have Javier Castellano riding with Todd Pletcher as the trainer, and one that's worked with Forte, they've touched on, certainly another one at a big price that you have to figure should factor in the race at some point. And I think at 10 or 12-1 certainly is another one that could be somewhere in the money.
And this is another one coming back at 4. Grand Sonata was a pretty good horse last year, winning the Kitten's Joy at Gulfstream Park in early of 22. Just a matter of he definitely will have to improve. And running against the races that he's run, he definitely has all the opportunity to improve, getting first-time Lasix as well in the spot, if that's something that you care about. Out of AP Indy, El Prado, Medaglia d'Oro, this horse definitely has the breeding to run all day. Just a matter of I might just like a few others a little more in this spot. But Grand Sonata has all the reason to improve coming back at 4. But I agree with Kenny Neely, very astute viewer, my friend. If you're watching, 84 watching, we only got 10 likes. Come on, guys. Smash that like button. Show us you're enjoying the show. Kenny, thanks so much again. Greatly appreciate the support. But I'm going 9-4-2. Charlie's going 2-11-9 in this spot, and he's interested in 2 long shots, the number 6 for Wesley Ward and the number 12 for the other Pletcher with Castellano riding. Charlie, switching over the PPs right now and the Equibase. Give me 2 seconds. Oh, why did it do that? It lagged on me. Sorry. The 8th race is going for maidens, 30,000 claiming, going 1 mile on the dirt. Draws a field of 10 with 1 also eligible. The morning line favorite is the number 8 Rule Breaker for Lascano and Lindsay Schultz, which is interesting to see. both of us are going other places in this race. I actually have the number 8 in third. Charlie has the number 8 nowhere, but we are both going for the Asmussen and Irad horse on the outside just for luck. Charlie, I'll let you go first, obviously, as you are the quote-unquote guest on this show. What did you like most about the number 10?
Yeah, for me, it was just a no-brainer again with the connections. Asmussen, Irad, the horse. I mean, obviously for this field, the figures aren't going to be anything crazy. We're kind of moving a little bit down in terms of competitive level. That's what happens when you move to 30,000 after what we've been covering, which have been some tremendous fields. But yeah, with the consistent figures and at least showing that consistent improvement, 45 to 52 to 57, it at least is something to admire and acknowledge compared to a lot of the horses in this field. So I just think just for luck, I feel like this was a spot meant for the horse to kind of be one of those where I wouldn't say it's at the stage with only 4 races where the horse has to quote unquote win, but certainly one where you have to feel this was one where they're kind of pointing to, okay, you can see the horse was a long shot in all the past races. This kind of feels like the one where they're like, okay, we're done putting you in tough races. This is the one where you're meant to kind of bang and have your chance to break your maiden. I don't know if you saw it that way as well.
I mean, I'll tell you, I saw a few other good stats on this horse. You can see in my little box up here. I have damn stats. I'll go to that in a second. Lon, I haven't seen you in a while. Lon, thanks so much for joining the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. But just for luck for Asmussen, I actually thought I was going to ride a little bit under the radars. This horse has only been running on the grass, and Asmussen takes over and puts this horse immediately on the dirt. But La Bohemie only ran 1 race at Sam Houston, but the progeny, this horse has 6 for 12 in dirt routes with its progeny, and with a top buyer of 87. I mean, Divine Miracle is a very good dirt horse out of Distorted Humor. Check Rate broke his maiden on dirt at Monmouth, and then obviously just for luck here. But I think the number 10 I think Asmussen takes over this horse and puts him immediately on the dirt. I like that sign. The horse has been working okay and definitely not fast by any means, but I think dropping down into 30 claiming and putting this horse on the dirt is extremely interesting to me on top. And I thought, like I said, I was going to fly a little bit under the radar with that pick, but obviously not, as Charlie, my very astute friend, has the horse on top. But second, you have the number 6 left and behind, Barclay Tag, Katie Davis. Barclay hasn't been very good, especially with these dirt to turf moves, but the horse has figures that fit in the past.
Yeah, and that was my angle. You look on both surfaces, it doesn't really seem like it makes too much of a difference for the horse. Dropping from a 58 to a 56 after the switch doesn't really concern me at all, especially again in this field. And again, that's what I'm just looking for really, was just in a race where you're not going to see the strongest figures, just looking for anybody who has any sort of consistency, any sort of decent figures. And that's where you get what left me behind. So that was my angle. Now, granted, the horse, if you look again from how the horse has run in the past and the figures, will probably be trying to run a similar race for Left for Luck, except I think Left for Luck is a little faster and will probably get the first jump. So that's why I had to put the horse on bottom. And then for my third pick, the number 7, Atlanta's Acuna. My angle with Atlanta's Acuna is just, if you look around the figures, there's just not much speed in this race. There really isn't. It's really just the 7 and 8. And I feel like this horse, as you can see with the red figures, which you've explained plenty of times to the viewers, means like hot paces. The horse has really had to kind of be a victim of a lot of hot paces, which is not ideal when you're a speed horse, because then you're working on overtime with all this other pace. So in a race where there really isn't much pace, I thought, why not go for a price on bottom where, other than the 8, I don't really see any other speed to really stress out about. Again, love Javier Castellano, and thought, again, at 8-1, why not put the horse somewhere? Certainly think with a little less competition, maybe with a slightly slower pace, could help this horse out at a price, at least be somewhere in the money.
Yeah, I mean, look, these Bass races, these two, I just don't like horses in these races that I know there's not a whole lot of speed, which, I mean, a lot of these horses just like to go to the lead because they can't pass, realistically speaking. You can see a lot of these, like, I mean, the number 6. The only reason I didn't like him is he's 0 for 6, even in the money. He's never been in the money before. These state bred on the dirt was my tell that this horse likes to sit in behind horses. He's not fast enough to get the lead, and he just doesn't pass. Like, he came into 5th here, but then just kind of faded away. He got into 4th and then faded away. Got into 5th and faded away. It's just not a horse that I'm willing to trust, especially at a price of probably like 5, 6, 7, 8-1. It's just not something. And then Atlanta's Acuna is kind of the same thing for me, even though he is a little bit more speedy than the number 6. Just gets out in front and just doesn't like to battle necessarily, it seems like. So and the figures are a little low in the dirt. I'm willing to look other places. The number 2 I have for Linda Rice, Jose Ortiz. Obviously, the hot barn right now is Linda is the top trainer at Saratoga so far this meet. This horse is just one on the drop. Linda does a very good job with placing her horses. I think dropping this horse down to 30 is where this horse can win. Uncle Marty has shown that in the past in these races at Saratoga and back at Aqueduct last year, or Belmont at Aqueduct, I keep saying back at Aqueduct, has the ability to pass horses in hot paces. You can see losing to Looms Boldly. If I go to his page real quick, Looms Boldly, named after the great podcast host in Pete Fornatal, Looms Boldly. He's a state bred stake winner in New York. He's a very good runner, and just finishing about 3.5 lengths behind that horse is nothing to be ashamed of. Dropping down again to 30, I just think Linda places this horse where he has a chance to win. And the number 8, Rule Breaker, who I have on top. This is another one that seems that doesn't really like to pass, but dropping down into the $30,000 claimer, I think, is where this horse can win. Coming off of Brad Cox to Lindsey Schultz, puts him on the turf, runs like garbage, frankly. Coming back to the dirt, I think this horse has a better chance, especially at the 30,000 level. I'm just worried about that 5-2 value line and where that stands, as I would not be willing to play this horse anywhere near that 5-2 mark. But other than that, there's really not too many horses to go on. The number 3, 4, and 5 really don't look anything special at all. The number 1 has this really nice buyer back and Aqueducted earlier this year for Michael Trombetta. Working well. This is one to keep in mind coming down for the drop, but just even in the races that he's been competitive, he's still not being bet and he's losing by double digits. So I'm not willing to trust that. But the price could be right for that horse. And I just think the number 10 with the damn stats could be really tough. And the 2 with the drop could also be something to look at. Yeah, no, there are off the turf races. Andy said so. Yeah, race 10 is off the turf. It's 1, 3, 5, and 10 are off the turf today. 7 and 9 are on the grass. Those are the only 2 that are staying on the grass today out of the 6 carded turf races. I'm going 10-2-8. Charlie's going 10-6-7. Charlie, switching over the picks to the penultimate race on the card in the featured race of the day. It is the Grade 2 Bowling Green Stakes for $250,000, going 1 3/8 on the turf course. And I already have bad juju with these horses with the number 1 Swore, which all of you know that we talked about on Betting and Boozing on Wednesday. If you guys watched my top pick of the day, and just gets hammered right before the wire, and the horse looked like it's been a rough week for me, realistically speaking. And I won't give it up until. But there is a very, very talented horse in this field for the Bowling Green. It is a full field of 10 with 1 also eligible. The morning line favorite is the number 9, Rebels Romance, the Breeders' Cup champion for Richard Mullen, Charlie Appleby, 8-5 morning line favorite. The second choice is the number 5, Soldier Rising for Christophe Clement and Jose Ortiz. The third choice is the number 3, Never Explained for Shug McGahee and Luis Saez. And as I switch over the picks right now, I have all those horses in my top 3. Charlie is 1 out, going with the Chad on the inside and third. But Charlie, I'll let you talk about the number 9, Rebels Romance first. Just Breeders' Cup champion, goes over to Dubai, doesn't run necessarily the best race, but coming back to the States looks very live.
I just think this horse, I mean, obviously this is the feature race, so it makes sense. It's just obviously by far the most talented horse we're seeing of the day. Rebels Romance, just to me at least, looks incredibly tough. I mean, I know when you look at like the other horses in this field, obviously with how big the field is, it's like, wow, 8-5 seems very steep. And I'm not gonna lie, it's not necessarily a value pick. But yeah, for me, I just think the horse seems ultra tough in this spot. Obviously, you mentioned won the Breeders' Cup. Really hasn't done anything wrong. You mentioned went to Saudi Arabia, didn't really work out, unfortunately. But yeah, I just think if this horse goes back and returns to form, which I anticipate will, I don't see anybody beating Rebels Romance. Is that what you're thinking?
I mean, look, there's many reasons to beat favorites playing for value and stuff like that. Even off that last effort, I don't think this is one that you want to try and beat. Rebels Romance ran at 107 in the Breeders' Cup Turf, beating horses like Warlike Goddess, Stone Age. I mean, we can just go to that field. Obviously, it's the Breeders' Cup, but Miss Shrift, the most winningest horse in history, Nation's Pride, Broom, Channel Maker. I mean, obviously it's a Breeders' Cup race, so it goes on and on. But Rebels Romance just absolutely swooped by every single horse down the stretch at Keeneland. Multiple Group 1 winner in Europe on the good turf, might I add. So I think the turf being soft even helps Rebels Romance more, in my opinion. The last race at Dubai, you can throw out, I mean, off the ship, versing the greatest turf horse in the world right now in Equinox. There's just so many things that point to this horse being live, not to mention coming over and running one over the Oklahoma track in 48 flat. So this is not one to, in my opinion, this is not one that you want to try and beat in Rebels Romance. Obviously, Charlie Appleby, there's not much more to say about his success in the States. But the number 5, Soldier Rising, who you have in second, I have in third. This is one that I've tried to chase many times. And whether or not he likes to be in the winner's circle or not in these big races, he's usually always there.
Yeah, I mean, again, another horse with strong connections, very strong, consistent figures. For me, you kind of get a vibe that this horse kind of has a case of second-itis. I mean, you look in 17 starts, has come second 7 times. But I mean, you get ultra consistent efforts. Obviously, Jose's rode the horse 3 times with 2 very solid efforts out of the 3, which both resulted in seconds. The issue with me with this horse is obviously a deep closer, just like the top choice that we both have. So I don't think Soldier Rising will likely win. I think if you are looking for a horse to necessarily get the win, maybe look for, obviously a speed, try to go with a horse that's going to have a different angle, because no one's going to outbeat the best closer who's also the best horse. But I do think Soldier Rising has a very reasonable chance to get right up in their top 3. Could take a step forward and end up winning the race and prove me wrong and get out of second-itis, but still nonetheless a very impressive horse. Don't know if you'll get too much value, though. If you are looking for the exactas, maybe you will get a little bit more value, just because I think the 9 will be bet down so much. But again, still a very consistent, respectable horse with some very solid figures.
Yeah, and this is one of those horses, like I said, I've chased many times, and whether he's good enough to win, he always gives his effort, and this is always a horse that I need to have in the money, although I have him in third. Soldier Rising for Christophe Clement, just, 100 buyers all over the place in hot paces. I think there's enough speed in this race to get this horse home, at least in the money in this spot. But you have the number 1 in third, which is highest honors for Chad Brown, Ired Ortiz, coming off 2 kind of dud efforts. Doesn't have that necessary triple buyer, but usually always gives his best consistent effort as well.
Yeah, and it's tough. As you mentioned, the horse hasn't lived up necessarily to the expectations. I mean, you look farther back, obviously, with the 98, 97. That's good enough to be very competitive in this field, but then didn't get back to it. But gets Irad back, which, to me, obviously seems like a big upgrade. Love the connections. And again, for me, what was kind of tough is I feel like Chad Brown always runs big in these races. You know what I mean? I'm not saying he'll win, but I feel like it's one of those where we've touched on this before on Betting and Boozing, where it's like when you see a Chad Brown horse in races, you end up kind of regretting if you leave any of them off, because one of them is bound to find somewhere competitive. And for me, out of the Chad Brown's, highest honors was the one that I personally found the most interest in. Again, I'm not necessarily saying the horse could win, but I certainly think, especially getting Irad, that this horse could certainly be in and around the money. And an 8-1, that's a lot of value for a Chad Brown horse in a stakes race. Normally, you're looking at a favorite. So figured, why not throw the horse in?
Yeah, my biggest concern with highest honors is he's still running low 90s, but I think his best days might just be a little bit behind him, running last year and obviously years before that, racing on the dirt. But he hasn't won since an optional claiming at Gulfstream last spring. Excuse me, I couldn't think of the word, but I usually think he's a lot better going longer too. You'll see a lot of these races are 1.5 miles, so cutting back a little bit to 1 3/8. Obviously, it's not that big of a cutback, but I think he just needs a little bit. He's very grindy in a lot of these spots. He just doesn't necessarily have that big punch to be able to kick in like a horse, maybe like Rebels Romance will have. So I'm willing to play against him, especially if he takes a little more money, being Chad Brown in the States. But like I said, he always gives a consistent effort. He's usually in the money. It's just a matter of I don't know if he's good enough in this field necessarily. I went the number 3, Never Explain, in second. I just think for Shug McGahee and Louis Saez, Louis is going to be aggressive, put this horse in a good spot. I think he'll be just behind the first flight in the spot, getting the first run on horses like Rebels Romance. So being that this horse might be the leader at the top of the stretch, whether he's good enough to hold off the closers is definitely the question. Pairing up 97s in the last 2 races at 5, I think he has every right to improve a little bit beyond that. Whether, it's good enough to win is definitely a question mark in the spot going a little bit longer. But I think the number 3, Never Explained, is extremely interesting, especially from a tactics standpoint, sitting right behind the top flight. I'm going 9-3-5 in this spot. Charlie's also going 9-5-1. Again, it'll be very hard, in my opinion, to beat Rebels Romance in this spot coming back to the States, but there's definitely some horses that you could use underneath to be able to get a little bit of value in your play. But Charlie, we're moving on to the last race here. We're making good time, so we have a little bit of time, probably about 7 minutes to go through this last race. Again, for everyone out there, this race is off the turf. Race number 10 is off the turf, which, Charlie, I don't know if you want to talk about a little bit about your different picks. I'd
probably adjust them slightly.
You'll have to adjust them, as you didn't know that the races were off the turf until you got on here. But this field originally drew a full field of 12 with 2 also eligibles, with 1 MTO on the outside, Little Prankster for Gaffleone and Philip Bauer. It is going 5.5 furlongs on the dirt now for a man special weight, 136.5, with the morning line favorite, at least originally, was the number 4 Riviere, which I thought was actually a little interesting for Louis Saez and George Weaver. But as I switch over to the picks right now, again, my picks are updated for the dirt. I would love to see who stays in. If the scratches are in, please feel free to send them out to us, and we'll definitely take a look at them, because I don't know if Andy Serling or anything's posted, which he actually just did. So how about that? That's pretty good. The race number 10, let's see. I'm looking at them right now. Sorry, everybody. As I bring them up here, race number 1, 7, 9, 10, and 13 are scratched in this race. So the 1, 7, 9, 10, 13 are what's out in this spot. And you'll see my picks are updated for the off the turf race, but Charlie's have not been, as we will update as it goes on. White and everything just went blank on my side. Hold on. Sorry, 1 second, guys. My apologies. Okay, there we go. Switching over. Charlie, you had the number 3 on top in this spot originally. I'll let you kind of look at the races. If you want to put in the private chat what you want me to update, I'll touch on for you in a second. But I have the number 12 on top. Brooklyn Gurley for Arnaud Delacour and Flavian Pratt. Getting, granted, this horse started in a maiden optional claiming. Was not in for the claim, might I add, but on kind of wet dirt at Delaware, getting second, bet down pretty heavily. I just like this horse's. By the way, this is a big stat that I had for Arnaud Delacour. If you go here to the trainer claim, and first after the trainer switch to Arnaud, he's 14 for 46. He wins 30% and 60% in the money. I just think this horse is 62, really holds up on dirt, and he has every right to improve in this spot, although it is a much tougher spot in this race. But now it becomes a lot easier, in my opinion, coming off the turf, as a lot of these horses to his inside scratches out. So the 12 was not a very good post, but now he runs from about the 7-8 hole in this type of spot, which is much more achievable, in my opinion, in this spot. I'm going to Charlie's picks are in. I will switch them up right now. And Charlie, I'll let you touch on, you like the MTO, Little Prankster, who gets into this race now for Philip Bauer, Tyler Gaffleone, who's shown a lot of promise in the past in Kentucky and ran a bullet over the dirt. Definitely will be the most likely morning race favorite in this spot.
Yeah, so certainly I would say the one concern has to be the fact that this horse has just taken a ridiculous amount of money.
My bad, guys. I'm switching it to race 10. From yesterday, I had it at race 11. It's my fault. Race 10. Sorry, Charlie, go ahead.
You're good. I would say, the only concern I have with Little Prankster is the horse takes a ridiculous amount of money every single time and just keeps getting seconds. But I feel like this is another one. We've talked about this before in past races we've covered on Betting and Boozing. where a horse is kind of like, in that spot where it's like they have to win now. And I feel like, again, with Little Prankster, the thought probably had to be, if this race gets scratched off, this has to be where Little Prankster wins. The only one with real good dirt experience going far, that was my angle with Little Prankster. Again, love Tyler Gaffleo, and I certainly feel like the horses still run very respectable figure efforts, especially compared to this field. And the bull out workouts also really caught my eye. 46-1, 47-4, 48-1, 59-3. Certainly the horse is working forwardly as well. This just feels like, for me, for Little Prankster, a must-win spot now that it is on the dirt. Dirt.
A lot of these spots with these MTOs, this is especially with Little Prankster right now, where just 3 straight seconds, you wonder the second-itis, but I would argue these off-the-turf races are a much easier spot, especially for an MTO. This would be all or nothing for me, and we say this all the time, but this would be all or nothing for Little Prankster. If he doesn't get home here, this would be a very tough horse to understand what to do next with. But I have the 14 second as well. Just definitely the biggest form on dirt, working extremely well up to this spot. Philip Bauer gets lucky and gets the MTO in. Should be the most likely winner, and definitely will be the most deserved morning line favorite if it comes, or post-time favorite if it comes down to that. But you are sticking with your guns. The number 2, Risk Free, is why I have in third as well. Just talk about, this is a horse. Talk about second-itis. This horse has run 15 times, 7 seconds and 4 thirds, 11 for 15 in the money, but just can't seem to get that winning number home. And for me, especially with a horse that's going to take a little bit more money, especially in an off the turf spot, there's no way I can play this horse on top. But underneath, the horse always runs his best race and usually gives the underneath price, Charlie.
No, that was my exact angle. Consistent figures, runs very. I actually really loved the value on the turf and love it even more on the dirt. But obviously, as you mentioned, will probably take money. But I just couldn't leave the horse off. Look, the horse is not a bad horse. The efforts have been very respectable and consistent, and the horse is always somewhere in the money. So for me, that was my angle, especially if you're playing the exactas. I think Risk Free is a very good one to consider. Another one that'll probably get out there, probably sit a stalking trip just off the 14. I just don't think the horse will have enough late kick to be able to get around the horse, but certainly one that should be second or third and be around the money. Consistently likes to be around the money. So I certainly think if you're looking for a solid horse to kind of bank on, if you have a strong pick on one of those short prices, I feel like Risk Free is a horse you have to play somewhere in the exactas and trifectas and will be in around there. And then with the 3, I know the horse was meant to be on the turf, but since the horse, at least from what you had told me, didn't scratch, I still think the horse is way too talented to not consider. You get Irad and Chad Brown, certainly not a cheap horse, has been working very well. If the horse is still staying on, which again, you said is, certainly means that they think the horse is still in with a shot on the dirt and the surface change isn't enough to scare them from scratching the horse off. Would not surprise me at all if the 3 wins. It's just the concern for me and why I had to move the horse from my top pick to third was just, since the horse was intended to be on the turf, it was a little hard for me to be able to put it over 2 horses that have experience on the dirt when one of them was meant for the dirt. And you could argue the other one would probably prefer it on the dirt because with the other horses not having that dirt experience really benefits that horse. So that's why I'm 3.
And especially in these 3-year-olds, especially 3-year-olds and up, I think having that experience is definitely a big plus. But obviously, Chad thinks this horse can run on dirt. Obviously, the works would show. But out of an Irish bred horse, the siblings, the one horse that ran at Saratoga and Delaware this year just absolutely has done no running at all. I think this horse might be a little bit better suited for the turf, but obviously getting Chad and Irad, you'll probably won't get this horse at a price either. But I just wanted to go over the scratches before we end the show, Charlie. But I think the number 3 is interesting, and obviously the 2 I had, and the 14 is definitely, like I said, the most likely post-time favorite and the most likely winner. I think the 12 is extremely interesting at a price coming off that last race at Delaware for Arnaud Delacour, who's 30% off the trainer switch. I'm going 12, 14, 2. Charlie's going 14, 2, 3 in a very tough ending leg to this pick 5. Charlie, going over the scratches just real quick before we end the show. Race number 7, the number 3, Safe Conduct, is a steward scratch. The number 8, Rinaldi, is a vet scratch. And the number 13, 14, 15, and 16, all the also eligibles and MTOs are out of race 7 as that one stays on the turf. The number 8, the 8th race, the only one that scratches is the number 11, which is the also eligible Utamaro. In the 9th race, thank you so much to Katie for pointing it out. The number 2, Rock Emperor, is out. That's the other Chad Brown horse in the Bowling Green, and the number 6 Strong Quality, who is the number 6 for Mark Cassidy, and Florent Giroux, who is 5th in the Manhattan, is out. And as we went over the scratches for the 10th race, but there's no scratches in the first leg either, the 6th race on the card. But thank you everyone to the chat. It's been a great viewership show. I want you guys to crush your bets today. It's going to be an absolute great day. Jim, thanks so much for joining the show, my friend. I appreciate the kind words. And he said, Matt Miller said, you got to get up here ASAP. Only thing that can make this place better is more friends. Guys, don't you worry. I'm so excited to get to Saratoga on Thursday, flying here. But this is the big thing from Matt Miller. Friendly advice to all based on recent observations. Eliminate half the races you were going to play and double your bets on the others. Tough races. Saratoga, especially yesterday. Obviously you can tell from my experience yesterday was not a very good one, but Saratoga is extremely tough. And I share the same sentiments as Matt does, which is why I post my picks on Twitter with those best bets every day. Those are my bets that I'm playing and I'm hammering. For $50 from me on the still college budget, quote unquote, is still hammering. I only usually play 2 to 3 bets a day and usually play them for bigger dollar amounts. That way, if I hit my best opinions, I hit big, and I'm not trying to chase money with my lesser opinions, especially at Saratoga, where there's many, many different things that can happen. But guys, thanks so much for all the support in the chat. It's been an absolute great day out on this show and great viewership. But good luck to everybody out there at Saratoga today, and crush your bets for July 30th at Saratoga. For my co-host Charlie Freeman and for myself, Kyle Roscoe, this has been Saratoga today for July 30th. Good luck, everyone, today, and crush your bets. Have a good day, everybody.
If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.